Hey guys, it's Merce. Welcome back to Harpies in the Trees, where I review horror books with a supernatural focus. It's the 5,000 subscriber video! I'm so excited to do this video for so many reasons. One, I love talking about film. Two, it is a really big milestone. I love reading books. I love hosting, talking about books. I like editing and filming. All of these things I do because I love them, but if it wasn't useful for anyone and nobody really liked them, I would not be here right now making this video. So thank you so much for all of your support, for subscribing, for engaging with me, sharing with me. I really do appreciate it. And I'm just so happy that there are other people out there who also like supernatural horror. I feel like it was always a genre that it was kind of like the sillier of the horror genres, but I would beg to differ. I think it's pretty cool. So I did a poll asking you guys what you would like to see for this 5,000 subscriber video, and you guys chose to have me talk about my favorite supernatural horror films. It took me quite some time to pare down the films that I wanted to talk about. I had a list about 40 films that I love for all different types of reasons. And I don't always love films because they are 100% perfect, which is a pretty lofty, place to try and put a film into. I don't claim to be someone who knows anything about film. All I know is that these films make me happy. So I decided to pick the films that I watch all the time. These are my cozy films. These are the films that I watch when I'm drawing or I'm working on the computer or I'm cleaning. I have seen them so many times that I don't even need to look up to see where we are in the film. I just have to hear the music, hear the dialogue, I know what's going on. And they're just like companions, they're old friends. I did have some core favorites in my list that a lot of horror fans definitely have in theirs because they're just iconic films, they're really good films, but I didn't want to add these into my list because everyone is very familiar with them. And it's not like my list is like some obscure film school list, but these I felt like were kind of a given. Like, I think these are the ones that we all really love. So I didn't add films like Army of Darkness, The Shining, Nightmare on Elm Street, Hellraiser, The Craft, The Conjuring series, Event Horizon, Open House. Just kidding. I do have a few films in here that are pretty popular, but they are essential to my cozy core list. Before we get into my list though, let's talk about your supernatural favorites that you shared with me. And this is what you guys said. The Crow, The Taking of Deborah Logan, The Orphanage, Sinister, Flatliners, Poltergeist, Conjuring series, Paranormal Activity, Pet Sematary, The Lodgers, Pumpkinhead, What Lies Beneath, Ghost Story, The Haunting of Julia, I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, and The Grudge. Now let's begin. The Changeling stars a Hollywood veteran, George C. Scott, and this film is the oldest film on the list, but it also happens to be my #1 top supernatural ghost film. The story is about a composer. He retreats to a mansion that he rents because he wants to begin the process of moving on with his life and just kind of get away from memories because his wife and his daughter were killed in a car accident. So he moves to this mansion to focus on his composing and his teaching, but while he's living there, it is very clear that he's not alone, and he thinks that this might be the ghost of his daughter. This film tells the story of a Victorian family and their secrets. It's ghostly, it's supernatural, it's creepy and eerie. The performances are very good, but what most sort of seared itself into my brain was the sound design, because the sound design is its own character. It is so haunting. And it's something that if you hear it, you will never forget it. Sometimes I'll hear one of the motifs in the soundtrack and it's just like, oh, it's like a cold attic, you know, you could just feel it. Like in a lot of ghost stories, we have technology that's being used. And this centers around one of my favorite scenes in the film. And it is when John, George C. Scott's character, sits down with a medium in his mansion to see if she can reach out to this ghost that's in the house. And he has a cassette recorder recording this whole entire event. When everyone goes home and he's left by himself, he goes back to the cassette recorder, he listens to what was recorded, and it is not exactly the way that he remembers. It is extremely chilling, and the woman who plays the medium she's just really convincing in this role. She does this form of automatic writing, and she has this very far off look in her eyes. They're sort of glazed or watery. She really does seem like she's communicating with another world. Some key features of this story are hidden secrets, family dynamics, ghosts, attics, wells, a lot of really familiar but very cool stuff. This is a favorite film among a lot of film industry people. It's just one of those films I think that, like, for filmmakers is really interesting and intriguing, just I think in the way that the story is told. And one of the really cool, interesting things about the story is that the director actually wrote the script because he had an experience that allegedly was very similar to what happened in the movie. He stayed at this house, it was haunted, this story played out that's very, very similar to the one in the film, and he decided to make a movie about it. So this film always felt like it had more depth than most other ghost films. It just felt different. It felt very personal. Lady in White is actually a kids film, but it is a very dark kids film. It stars a very young Lucas Haas, and this story takes place in the 1960s. It's about a young boy who becomes involved in this murder mystery. There are these child murders that have been happening. And he becomes entangled in this because he is in the code room of a school and he witnesses this little ghost girl. This is a very eerie and spooky film, especially for kids. I know when I first watched it, I was profoundly creeped out and kind of spooked because the way that the little ghost girl, like the way her ghost is sort of, I guess, replaying itself in the code room is really weird. It's like you can see the ghost is there, but she's being manipulated by something that you can't see. And that to me was like, really, I don't know why that really creeped me out, but it was just really creepy. This film is actually inspired by an urban legend called the White Lady. This is a legend that is found in New York, specifically Rochester, New York. And it is about this ghost who would haunt the grounds of her house because her daughter was missing, but was never found. And this spirit of this woman would just haunt the grounds, searching for her missing daughter. Session 9 is a cult classic. This is one of those films that if you're an avid film lover, you've probably seen this film because it would take you a little bit of effort to sort of find it. You'd have to dig a little bit. It's not particularly popular in mainstream horror, but it is a really great film. This film is about a contractor who puts a bid on this abandoned insane asylum to remove the asbestos that's, kind of falling from the ceiling. And he wins the bid. He brings a small team of people in to help him with it, and they are trying to do it within a very small amount of time. But this is a big problem because everyone in the team is getting distracted with this building. This stars Peter Mullen. You've probably seen him in a bunch of other films. He has a very dangerous and stormy demeanor that really plays off well here because as soon as this film begins, right out of the gate, there's tension. And you're trying to find out where this tension is coming from. It is a bit of a slow burn, but like I said, because there's tension from the very beginning, it keeps you there because you need to find out why this is the way it is. You know something is coming, but what is it? Like The Changeling, the sound design for this film is so good. I mean, it is so good. That's a lot of bands have sampled clips from this film. And the location is actually filmed in a real abandoned asylum, which has now been torn down. But at the time when they were filming here in this location, it was difficult because there was a lot of danger. There was the real asbestos like just floating around. There was mold and there was mildew. So it wasn't really easy for the crew to shoot there. And this location is also its own character. It's like, it feels like it has its own story to tell. And you know that it's one of neglect and sorrow and sadness and cruelty. You can feel it. And because it's already oozing that in the film, it just really adds to everything. Also, they decided to use a lot of the furniture and objects that were just laying around in rooms and stuff like that as props in the film. It is so cool. In the commentary, Mullen talks about a scene they were filming on one of the roofs on the building, and he said that he heard voices telling him to jump. This film was actually inspired by a murder case that happened in Boston in the 1990s. A man who came home after work, his wife had burnt the dinner and he lost it, and he murdered her, took all of her organs and put them on stakes in the backyard. Bit of an overreaction, I'd say. The Ring, starring Naomi Watts, directed by Gore Verbinski. This is a really popular one. Most people like the Japanese version, which I like too, but this is the one that I don't know, it just struck a chord with me somehow. If you don't know what this movie is about, it is about a VHS tape that has some unusual footage on it, and if someone watches this tape, they will receive a phone call, and someone will say, 7 days, and you will die in 7 days. So the visual aspects of this film are stunning. The color grading is so good. The rainy Seattle location is just, it was just kind of refreshing than what you would usually see in a horror film at that time. The sound design again was really good. That like, the motif for the ring, whenever it like pops up, it's like so good. I just love it. And also all of these like visuals, these really cool things like the well and the woman, and you know, just these very stylized images. It almost looks like a student film from a film school or something. It's so awesome. And this is like another ghost story where technology is used. It's the VHS tape, which acts as a kind of virus, type of parasite. And being a type of virus, Samara needs people to propagate. The other aspect of Samara is really cool, and it was one of the things that I really liked the most out of everything, which was you cannot change Samara's nature. She is what she is. And that's really cool. This is obviously based off of a novel that was written in 1991 by Koji Suzuki. I cannot get this book in my hands. I'm not sure why. I've ordered it twice. Will not ship. I guess I'm not meant to have it. I guess maybe I'm cursed or that book is cursed. I'm not sure. The Naomi Watts' character was actually offered to Jennifer Love Hewitt, which I'm glad that they didn't really go with because Gore Verbinski came on a little bit later in the film, but he wanted to have unknowns because it just felt more real. You could have that fantasy that maybe these are real people, but if you see an actor you know, then the whole illusion is just broken. The next time you watch The Ring, be sure to pay attention to the set because there are rings hidden everywhere on the set. And I think that is so cool. I love Easter eggs. It just makes me feel like the director really cared and wants to put those devil in the details. There was really cool marketing for this movie. They used to play the footage from the VHS tape late at night on network channels, just without any context. And they would also take VHS tapes with the footage and just leave them on random cars. I'm not sure which city, but I'm going to assume it's probably Seattle. That would make sense. Woman in Black, starring Daniel Radcliffe. This was a movie that I actually had to watch a couple of times before I actually came around to loving it. But sometimes that just happens. Like, you just need a film to sort of grow on you. This film is about a young lawyer who heads out to the countryside to this estate, this woman's mansion, who has passed away, and he needs to get all of her affairs in order. But very quickly he begins to realize that there is something wrong with the story of the woman that he's sort of unraveling in her office through all of her paperwork and stuff. And also that he's not alone in the house. So this is a very classic Victorian styled ghost story. It has all of the hallmarks there. We also have another touch of technology, which are the wax cylinders that use needles to etch sound onto. Daniel Radcliffe is sort of unraveling some parts of the story through that. There's also these family dynamics and tragedy, but it's very spooky. Some of the scenes are so stunning. I love them so much. They chill me to the bones. My only issue though with this film is the sound design for the scream of the woman in black. It sounds like the Halloween store, you know, and you walk by this like bowl and a hand comes out and it screams. That's what it sounds like to me. One thing to note about this film that's pretty cool is all of the props in this house are actually real Victorian antiques. Mama, starring Jessica Chastain, directed by Andy Muschietti. This is one of those films that a lot of people don't like, but I really love this film. It has a lot of cool things going for it. The story is really awesome. Design for Mama is extremely unnerving and scary, creepy, and I love how much time we get to spend with her in this movie. So this story is about two young girls who live in this abandoned shack. It's pretty dirty, it's just them. They have been there for so long, they've gone feral. So they do not speak, they growl and they hiss and they walk on all fours, but they do seem to talk to something that's not there. They are adopted by their uncle, who then gets them into therapy so that they can be re-socialized, but this thing or person or whatever it is that they were speaking to when they were in the shack seems to have followed them to this new home. The design inspiration for Mama was actually inspired by Modigliani's style of women that he would paint. And if you remember from It Chapter 1, the painting of the woman with the flute, she was also inspired by Modigliani. And the actor who performed Mama also performed the leper in Chapter 1. And Jessica Chastain was in Chapter 2. So, you know, it all comes full circle, I guess. There are some scenes where Lily eats moths. In the movie, that's kind of like part of her diet. For the filming, the crew made these chocolate moths for Lily, thinking that she would really like them and, you know, enjoy eating them. But the actress who played Lily, who didn't speak English, so she didn't really actually talk that much, she didn't like chocolate. One of the coolest things to me though was the relationship between Mama and Lily. I thought it was really, really beautiful, and I really enjoyed the ending. So there you go. As Above, So Below was directed by John Eric Dowdle, who also did Poughkeepsie Tapes. This is a found footage film that follows these explorers who are in Paris. They decide they need to go down into the catacombs to find a specific artifact. But while they are adventuring through all of these tunnels and catacombs and things, they begin to experience these supernatural phenomena. This film has so many good things going for it. It's found footage in a really, really good way. It has ghosts, it has demons, it has masons, it has artifacts, it has catacombs, it has esoteric and occultish references. The special effects for this one are awesome. I remember when the first time I watched it, I was so surprised at the quality of the special effects. I was like, this is really good. I have so many favorite scenes in here, but one of the ones that I thought was pretty eerie was a really early scene where they are in the catacombs and they're kind of just beginning to realize that something is a little off. And they're going down the tunnel and they hear a phone ringing, like an old school rotary phone. And they were just like, what? This film is inspired by the 7 Layers of Hell, which is, if you watch it, it will make a lot of sense to you. This film was actually the first film to be filmed in the Paris catacombs, at least legally. They were actually able to get permission, so if you watch it, you'll be like, oh, all of these bones, they look really good. Yeah, it's because they're real. Ben Feldman is one of the principal actors, and you'll probably recognize him from Superstore, but he actually suffers from claustrophobia. So when he was filming this, he was low-key dying in almost every scene. So I'm pretty sure that that really influenced his performance because it was real. Drag Me to Hell by Sam Raimi. Okay, I love this film so much. This is a little bit different than the other films on my list in the sense that, you know, it's kind of humorous and a little bit silly, but it's spooky and chilling regardless. This story is about a bank officer, Christine, who gets in trouble with her boss for being too lenient on their customers. He wants her to really lock down these aggressive loans. She doesn't really want to, but if she wants to have a job and she wants to get a promotion, she's gonna have to do that. This old lady comes in and begs her to help her with this mortgage that she has on her house. She doesn't want to lose it. But Christine can't be lenient anymore. The old lady can't do the type of loan that they would want her to do, so she's like, I'm sorry, I can't help you. The old lady then becomes extremely upset and leaves her with a curse. Christine has no idea how bad this is gonna get. So there's seances, there's a talking demon goat, there's a lot of demon activity, there's a bunch of these really gross, gory, over-the-top scenes that are so awesome. They are definitely meant to be humorous, but it's one of those things where you're either gonna find it funny or you're not, you know? One of the gross, funny scenes that always sticks out in my mind is when Christine goes back to her car and she gets into this like altercation with the old lady. The old lady gets into the car somehow, and so they're like struggling, and the old lady's teeth fall out, and she starts gumming Christine's jaw. And like, it's so gross. There's like slobber and saliva everywhere, and the old lady just looks like a rabid raccoon, you know? And Christine is like screaming her face off. It's hilarious, but also like kind of scary. Ouija, Origins of Evil, directed by Mike Flanagan. This is about a widow who decides to introduce the Ouija board into her set, basically. By set, I mean like she gives these rigged readings for people. So she has all kinds of things set up to like make the lights flicker and all that kind of stuff to really, you know, hit it home. So she brings this Ouija board thinking it's gonna be a cool new trick, but it ends up possessing her youngest daughter, Doris. So you'll never guess what movie Mike Flanagan was really into while he was making Origins of Evil. It's The Changeling. There's definitely some similarities, just like kind of like in mood and atmosphere, especially like with the seances and stuff like that. So there's that vibe there. I'm gonna guess that he wanted this movie to also be in the 1970s because The Changeling was filmed in the very late 1970s, released in 1980. The acting is really good. You'll recognize 2 of the actors from The Haunting of Hill House, and we're gonna see Doris again later on down in the list. But it's really spooky, really creepy, chilling, everything that I kind of want in a horror movie. It does have this one trope though that's, I think it's definitely kind of overdone, but I think it was still good here. It's a trope that is always creepy and unnerving, so I still really liked it. It's Chapter 1, directed by Andy Muschietti. Probably don't need to tell you what the story is about. It is just so iconic. I don't know if this is like a really popular supernatural film for a lot of people, but I really liked Chapter 1. Chapter 2, no thanks. Of course, I truly love Skarsgård as Pennywise. I think it is phenomenal. But the mood of the film also feels really dangerous. It feels very predatory, which it is because Pennywise is like hiding behind every little corner, just ready to like grab you with his little spider fingers or whatever. And when Pennywise is evolving into these other monsters and creatures or whatever, It's so creepy. It's like watching a balloon get blown up and it just keeps going and going and going and going and you're just cringing, you know, like, when is it gonna stop? I really liked the leper. That kind of took me for a surprise. I did wish that he was a little perverse though, because in the book he's definitely nasty. And I thought that would have added to the revulsion a little bit. The interior of the Neibold house was actually an abandoned house. When you're using actual, like, real locations, like abandoned places or whatever, it adds a quality that not always a set can do. Also, fun fact, Tilda Swinton was considered for the role of Pennywise, which Skarsgård is amazing, but I think that her version would have been a completely different animal, and I would like to see that one day. Annabelle Creation, directed by David F. Sandberg. This stars Lulu Wilson, who was Doris in Origins of Evil. The story is about a doll maker who has found a way to keep his dead daughter's spirit in a doll that he makes. But he realizes too late that whatever is in this doll is not his daughter. A few years later, they decide that they want to open up their home to orphans. So they reach out to some nuns and they decide that they will go ahead and send some girls down there with one accompanying nun. Once they get to this farmhouse, it seems really nice until one of the girls discovers the doll. A quick hit list on this. It has demons, scarecrows, a doll maker, a house with a secret, a family in despair, orphans caught up in the line of fire, kind of, sort of. The scenes where we get to bear witness to the supernatural activity are mesmerizing. I think they're so effective, done so well. I just get really excited when I see new ways of the supernatural being expressed in film. It feels like they really cared about the supernatural aspect of the film, you know, so that always makes me happy. The Ritual. So this story is about a group of men who decide to honor their friend by doing a trip that they were all supposed to do together before he was murdered. So they head over to Sweden. While they're hiking in this forest, they come across this shack, which looks like it's abandoned. And they decide to stay there that night, but wasn't really a good idea. And there was something very weird in the cabin itself. And this kicks off some horrible and nightmarish events. This is one of those films that I put on without really knowing what it was. I thought it was gonna be something really vanilla and bland. I just didn't have any expectations for it. Boy, was I totally wrong, and it was awesome. I loved the banter between these guys, you know, just as they're kind of like beginning their journey, where it's just like kind of playfulness and friendship and whatever, and then, you know, going towards the end of it, it is turning into mayhem. It is turning into chaos. I thought it was done really, really well. I liked seeing the forest in these overlays of like these kind of surreal moments that the characters would have. I really liked the design for the god. To me, it was just very original and unique, but familiar in some way, like, you know, maybe some kind of, I don't know, primordial way. And one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when this god thing poses. And he's like unfolding himself and he's putting himself into a very specific configuration. And you know that he's thinking like, I'm amazing, behold me in all of my glory, worship me, you know? And I would have totally worshiped him. I've been like, yeah, let's do this. Let's live in the forest forever and we'll hang out. The creature designer is the same artist who did the mother in Crimson Peak, which was awesome. The Ritual is one of those films I think that you could trick one of your non-horror watching friends into watching. You know, like just let it start, because it doesn't seem like it's going to be a horror film until it's too late. So my newest addition to my cozy list is Dr. Sleep by Mike Flanagan. This is about Danny Torrance from The Shining, all grown up, who must protect this little girl from a predatory group called True Knot. They hunt down children and take their shining so that they can prolong their own lives. Revisiting The Shining was so weird the Overlook Hotel and the characters from the hotel, now including Jack Torrance, was so eerie. So eerie. It looked so good. I couldn't believe like how good it looked. The performances by the actors were just stellar. And it felt haunted, you know, like it really felt like I was in an abandoned house, but I wasn't alone. And like that's kind of like how it felt to view this again, because it seems to be so strange to be able to resurrect something from the past in such a almost near perfect way. Rebecca Ferguson just really blew me away with this character, Rose. She played this villain that was just really like without remorse, extremely nasty, very self-concerned. She wasn't trying to perform this villain character in the way that maybe a lot of people would have tried to. It was really harrowing to watch, and it was scary to see what she was going to do when Rose is sort of astral projecting in some way. Like I felt like that was really cool and interesting. And also when the True Knot members would die, they would cycle. So you would see like these flushes of like other lives, you know, of the people that they had taken or whatever. The whole act of dying looked so unnatural, as it should be, because of what they were and how they had lived so long. Stephen King got the idea to write Dr. Sleep because a reader came to one of his book signings in like the 80s and asked him, what happened to Danny Torrance? And that, I guess, kind of just put a little seed in there for him, and he kind of just started writing the story. But it was pretty cool because it's like, you know, you never know where your inspiration is going to come from. And I think it's really cool that it came from someone who loved your work. So those were my 13 films, my cozy 13. I hope that you liked this list. I hope it wasn't too basic for you. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, please like and comment. And if you'd like to see more videos from me, please subscribe. Please take care of yourselves, look out for one another, and I'll talk to you next time.